Good evening. Technical assistance is being offered by Paul Davis. Some years ago, Robert Duvall filmed Stars over Henrietta. Tonight, we are here to celebrate Stars from Wiley. I taught Ben, I taught his sister Jill, I knew Brantley, I love his mother and dad. I once tried to sell Mrs. Starr 5 sweatshirts for a junior fundraiser. She turned me down flat. She said they had to feed those boys. I came to know Ben personally his junior year when he signed up for Honors English. And this was the year that Wiley instituted 0 hour. We met at 7:30 in the morning. Ben was there every day and in top form. If you can picture Dustin Hoffman dressed as a woman in Tootsie, then you can picture Ben in a flowered dress and blonde wig portraying Amanda Wingfield in The Glass Menagerie, singing a love song to her wayward husband. I showed that film for years, and I wish it still existed. We would be showing it tonight. Then I bring up that story to remind you that as you go through life, you're going to have critics, like Gordon Ramsay. And you are going to have fans, like the thousands of people that tuned in to watch your adventures every week on television. And then tonight, you are in a room full of fans, people who love you and support you and can't wait to hear what you have to say. Ben Starr.
So I last set foot on this stage when I was 17 years old. And as much as it pains me to say this, that was, in fact, 17 years ago. Now, this is a bit of a full circle for me. When I was a student at Wiley, I somehow found myself speaking before gatherings of adults like the Rotary Club, and the Lions Club, and the Farm Bureau. And strangely enough, 17 years ago when I graduated from high school was the last time I gave an official public speech. Until tonight. And here I am, back in the same hallways and cafeteria, about to give my first speech in 17 years. I'm going to try to make it a better speech than the very first speech I ever gave. My parents are sitting right here at this table, and perhaps they know the story better than I do because they watched that first speech take place, but it was a speech about soil and water conservation for 4-H. I was probably 8 years old, and I had thoughtfully prepared a variety of visual aids and props to help educate my audience about how important it is to conserve soil and water. And I placed all these props into a paper grocery bag in a very careful and cleverly thought out manner. It was just in the opposite order that I would actually need them in. So the first visual aid was at the bottom of the bag, buried under the rest of them. My parents say that I delivered almost half that speech bent over with my head down inside a paper bag. And it was one of the funnier moments of my childhood for them. It's too bad we didn't have video cameras back then, but now we've all got video cameras on our cell phones in our pockets. Isn't that strange? 17 years. Tonight I'm going to try to avoid keeping my head stuck down in a paper sack, primarily because Becky would probably try to auction it off. This brown paper bag has been around the head of Ben Starr. Let's start the bidding at $50. $50, anyone? Now, high school is certainly nothing like real life. We can all agree on that, right? And while for some folks you could offer them all the money in the world and they still wouldn't want to go back and relive their high school experience, for most of us, the chance to go back to a world where all your bills are paid, you have no mortgage or credit card debt, you don't have to worry about saving for your children's educational future, and you can just hang out with your friends all day and do a little bit of homework every now and then and go to football games and band parades and livestock shows on weekends. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that, right? It's a teacher's job to inspire every single student to become the best they can be and then better. That they have a chance to shape their life into whatever they want, that the entire world is their oyster. Unfortunately, for many students, this simply isn't the case. Perhaps their socioeconomic status makes it extremely likely that they'll end up working at Walmart rather than going to college. Perhaps their family situation is such that they're rushed into the workforce every day after class and they'll graduate straight into working 2 jobs to help support their family. Perhaps their performance on the all-important standardized tests, or perhaps their intellect is such that a teacher or a counselor knows they'll never get accepted to Yale. Perhaps your theater teacher, Ms. Clark, knows that while you may be a good actor by Wiley standards, you're nowhere near good enough to make a profession out of it in LA or New York. Perhaps your band director, like the late, great Louis Thornton, knows that even though you can make first chair oboe in the all-state band, primarily because you were the only one who auditioned, you'll never be good enough to be a professional musician. But the teacher's position is unique. And it goes far beyond the actual practical knowledge they're imparting, how to balance an equation, how to conjugate Spanish verbs, or program in C++. The secret of a successful teacher is so similar to a reality TV producer, it's almost scary. It's to create a world in which every single student fully believes they have the chance to win it all, to rise to incredible heights, to accomplish anything that their heart desires. And without that optimism and drive, a student scarcely stands a chance of any kind of success in the real world. Even if a student's situation seems utterly hopeless, that inspiration to dream big and shoot for the stars is absolutely critical, especially as a young person is developing into an adult. And at Wiley, I was surrounded by that kind of encouragement from every angle. Now let me be realistic for a moment and paint you a picture of the kind of person I was as a child. I was a dork. I read encyclopedias for fun. My family, while incredibly supportive and nurturing, was not the wealthiest in the school district. We didn't live in Fairway Oaks or Champions. We lived in a tiny, ramshackle rent house across the street from the old elementary school, and we'd occasionally find snakes inside the house. And with a total of 4 children, there was simply no way that my parents could afford to send each one of us to the college of our dreams. So had you looked at my file upon entering Wiley High School, you really wouldn't have expected me to become much of anything at all. But I had teachers who constantly told me, "We see great things in you, Ben. You can be as successful as you want to be." I actually had one rather creepy substitute teacher who every time he had me in class would drag me out in the hallway and say he saw in my future that I was going to become president of the United States. I can't remember the name of that guy, we just called him the horse guy. Not because of the way he looked, he trained horses really well. But when I look back at the teachers who had the most influence in my life, it wasn't because they successfully taught me how to calculate derivatives by hand, Mr. Cheek. It wasn't because they gave me the lead role in the one-act play competition, Ms. Clark. It wasn't because they taught me immaculate grammar like Ms. Davis. And it wasn't because they taught me that all rocks fall into one of 3 basic categories like Ms. White. Granted, these things did help me pass tests and get good grades. But if you ask me today what a derivative even is, I'm sorry, Mr. Cheek, I couldn't tell you. And if we were in Mr. Cheek's class right now, he would have thrown a piece of chalk at my head for saying that. I haven't acted on stage since I left college. My grammar is horrifically lax these days, Ms. Davis, I'm sorry. And Ms. White, I have no idea what those 3 categories of rocks are. But so much of who I am, the adult that I've become, was shaped by these teachers right here at this table, and many more who taught at Wiley. And it's not only the inspiration and encouragement these teachers kept heaping upon me that convinced me I could be as successful as I wanted. Each of the teachers I've singled out tonight stepped outside of a traditional curriculum and student-teacher relationship in order to inspire me to be creative and interdisciplinary. Mrs. Davis would allow us in honors English class to make short films instead of term papers. Now, some students might have considered that an easy alternative, and some parents might have been a bit miffed that their kids were off making a silly movie rather than reading Jane Austen. But I can directly connect all of the past success I've had in television to those silly little film projects in Miss Davis's class. They taught me to think in a dimensionally composed way, to craft a story's image rather than just its words. She allowed me to be creative in another way that I would have never experienced in a different class. Not to mention the fact that her very existence was inspirational in the first place. I have never had a more stubborn teacher with whom I had more arguments. Miss Davis is as hard-headed as they come, which you might not imagine from just looking at her. I told the Abilene Reporter-News a story about how I used to marvel at the way Miss Davis stapled papers with her chin, because she has limited use of her hands and her arms. And while that used to make some students laugh, it made me realize I could never take anything for granted. While the act of stapling papers might be considered simple and mundane for most of us, it could have been quite a challenge for Miss Davis. But she never once looked at it as such. She found a creative way around all of the obstacles in her life. She found a way to make it work. And that spirit of determination I witnessed every day in Miss Davis's class has stuck with me every day of my adult life. Other teachers made their impact on me almost entirely outside the classroom. We have two sitting right here, Miss White and Miss Clark. Now, Miss White, I'm going to be totally honest with you and tell you I cannot remember a single thing about your science class. I can't even remember which science it was. Was it earth science or biology? Physical science. Anybody know what that means? I don't even remember what grade I was in when I took your class. 9th grade. She remembers. But Miss White, along with Renee Clark, I spent more hours with them outside the classroom than any other teacher because they were both absolutely immersed in supporting extracurricular activities. Now, Miss White was a popular teacher, perhaps most famous for the aforementioned purple-tinted hair. "It's eggplant, Ben, eggplant!" she always used to scream at me with feigned annoyance. But Miss White, you'll be happy to know that one of my signature dishes that friends ask for their birthdays and all throughout the summer is now eggplant parmesan. I grow several varieties of eggplant in my garden, and even though as a child I could barely even think about eating eggplant without gagging, now it's one of my favorite ingredients to work with, and I think of you every single time I work with eggplant. One of the things that always struck me about Miss White is that she was probably closer to my age than most of my other teachers, but she always treated me like an adult. And that sounds like such a simple thing when I say it now, but when I was a teenager, it was a really, really big deal to me. Our conversations weren't one of a person in a position of authority speaking to a student. Every word that came out of her mouth felt as if we were both adults just sitting on a couch together chatting casually. Her wit, sarcasm, and sense of humor were infectious. And from Miss White, I learned how to be a fun person. That you can be in a position of responsibility and maturity, but still let your purple hair down and have fun every instant of every day. I believe Miss White probably made more of an impact on my personality and my outlook on life than anybody other than my parents. Another thing I'm extremely grateful for is that I attended Wiley before this frenetic obsession with standardized testing. The only thing I remember about standardized tests from my day was that the cafeteria made cinnamon rolls that morning and we all got them for free. There was no preparation for standardized tests, just an announcement the day before. And now I have many friends who are teachers in Texas and neighboring states, and it seems like all they can talk about is how obsessed their districts are with standardized test scores. Either the school as a whole isn't scoring high enough, so the teachers are forced to teach for the test and nothing more, or the school scores are exceptionally high, so the teachers are forced to teach for the test so the school retains its position as a top-scoring school. Now, this may help ensure that government funding and make the school attractive to affluent parents, but it's a giant disservice to the students. So I would encourage everyone here to fight against this obsession with standardized testing and let our teachers go about the business of educating and shaping young minds. I was shaped and molded at Wiley, mostly outside the classroom. And these teachers were not getting paid overtime to work with us after class on extracurricular activities or to take us on weekend trips to livestock shows and speech competitions. Our education was a labor of love for them, and I am not the only person to walk these halls who has turned out a better person for it. Thank you to all of you. talking way too long, and I promised Becky that I'd do a cooking demonstration and take your questions. So I apologize for being so long-winded, but luckily the cooking demonstration is going to take less than 5 minutes. Tonight I'm going to make a lot of housewives very happy because I'm going to teach you how to make a chocolate lava cake that when you cut into it, melty warm chocolate oozes out all over your plate, and you make it in the microwave in less than 5 minutes with practically no dirty dishes to wash afterwards. And tonight I'm also going to make a lot of housewives hate me for the rest of their lives because they're going to get addicted to it and make it every night for the next year and put on 20 pounds because of it. And as Miss Davis astutely noted, I actually put on 17 pounds myself on the set of MasterChef in only 7 weeks. Okay, so here we go with the cooking demonstration.